to the Cooler Women's Wellness Tribe, the podcast. Get comfortable, get your walking shoes on, and let's get going. Hello, wealthy women. Welcome to my first guest of 2024. I'm very excited. And I know that you're going to finish this, listening to this podcast, just feeling like someone's giving you a permission slip to actually, do something about the way that you're feeling with a helping hand. So I have Jen with me today, Jen Wilson, and she is a wellness coach, and she helps women to overcome stress and exhaustion. And she's here today to share her story, her experience, and just leading you out of that sort of mindset if you feel stuck there now. And I know a lot of you, especially in the new year, are probably feeling it. So welcome, Jen. How are you?
Hello. I'm really good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. And I'm really excited because I know that, especially, we have January. And we're recording in January, so this will be going out in February. We have, isn't the January blues, the most miserable day of the year is coming up, and after Christmas it's sort of a bit of a dip. So I'm really excited for you to share your expertise today. And we start with a little bit of background. So who are you, where are you from, and how did you end up being a wellness coach?
Yeah, so I'm Jen, and I live in a place called Harrington, which is on the west coast of Cumbria in the UK. I live with my husband, my 2 dogs, and my 8-year-old son. And I became a wellness coach really because of my own personal story and journey of what I've been through. Excuse me, sorry. It's quite a long story, but it spans well over a decade. But I think that's like a really important point to make, that I struggled for over a decade with chronic stress, and the reason I'm doing what I do now is because I just want to help other women. I don't want other women to suffer alone like I did, and I want women to be able to overcome it much quicker than I did, because over 10 years is a really long time for that to follow you around.
It is huge. Like I said, a decade is, I don't know, we kind of measure our lives by decades, don't we? So that's a huge chunk of your life so far that you have the memory of, being overworked, being burnout. How did you first, how did it start? What was happening to you? What symptoms were you getting?
So for me, it started, it was work-related stress initially. And I was in my late 20s and pretty new to the workplace. So, you're all learning out. You don't really understand the pressures and the strains and everything. And I was in a job which I now know that I wasn't suited to, but I was having all these symptoms. I was feeling really like emotional and tearful, and like I wasn't coping, and really, really unsettled. And I thought, I need to get a new job because this isn't for me. So I got a new job. Unfortunately for me, I got an even more stressful job and there was more pressure placed on me. So as time went on, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what was wrong. And I thought I had some kind of like really serious illness, but I didn't know what it was. And because I couldn't pinpoint a specific thing, I didn't feel like I could go to the doctor and say, hey, this is going on. And I read a magazine article one day, and I vividly remember exactly where I was stood in my old house, and it was this 2-page spread on stress, and it had this tick box of symptoms, and I had them all. So I was just like, I'm just stressed. I'm just stressed. So to me, the relief that I didn't have a serious illness, I just packed it all. I'm just stressed. Life can carry on. And that's what I did. I kind of just carried on. But all these little symptoms kept sort of building up, and they kind of like creep in, and you can put them down to something else. So yes, I felt like really tearful and emotional all the time. I had bodily aches and pains. I started getting digestive problems. I actually developed irritable bowel, which was brought on by stress. You know, it took a bit longer for that to come on fully, but it started with the little niggles of digestion. I was utterly exhausted. I was struggling to get through the day. I'd get home, lie down till it was time to go to work the next day. I couldn't concentrate. And these were building, by the way. So it started off with minor things, like you could put an ache and pain down to, I don't know, a workout at the gym, or a headache's just a headache, it'll go. I had a headache every day for 2 years, which when I say that now, why did I not think there was something I needed to deal with? And it's all these little things that come in that you dismiss as being something else. Oh, well, I'm irritable because it's my hormones, or I can't concentrate because I'm tired. And you just dismiss them. But what happens is, and what I know now looking back, is they all build up and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it got to the point when I was in this new role that it was like shutting down, because this is when I was about to be signed off work, when I hit my first burnout. And it's kind of like people are talking to you and you can see the mouths move, but you couldn't tell anybody back what they just said to you. You're kind of just going through the motions. And the build up to that was that those headaches for 2 years, those not being able to concentrate, not being able to make decisions, not feeling like you're coping, not sleeping, being utterly exhausted, just this whole host of different symptoms, to the point where what the doctor said to me, he said, you're just shutting down because you can't physically and mentally take any more. There's just nothing left to give. And I that first burnout, when I was signed off work, I remember my husband said, well, it wasn't my husband then, he was my boyfriend then, but he's my husband now, so he stuck around, thank goodness. But he said to me, like, how would you feel if something happened to one of the dogs? And I think he was like testing how bad a place I was, because I genuinely didn't feel anything about anything or anyone. I was just utterly numb to life, and that's burnout. You've just got nothing left to give. There's nothing mentally, there's nothing physically, there's nothing emotionally. And the physical side, from being an active person, it would take me all day to get out of bed, get dressed, take the dogs for one walk. That was all I could physically do. So that's how bad it got.
Even listening to all of that, it's like, it's hard, and it's hard to hear, and knowing that lots of other people are doing exactly the same as what you did. And I wrote down here just stress, and I underlined it, because that's what people say, I'm just a bit stressed, or it's just that, just shouldn't be there. It's so, we kind of like play it down, but it's serious, and the more you leave it, the more serious obviously it becomes. And in your case, the fact that just you're hardly able to get out of bed, to do everyday things that should be enjoyable, and it just saps the whole joy out of your life. You're like robotic. You're just like going through the motions. You're kind of existing, but you're not existing at the same time, if that makes sense. You're there existing, but there's nothing happening. And that just stress, I can honestly say now that if I had fully understood the implications on me physically, mentally and emotionally with stress, I certainly would not have celebrated just being stressed. And people do say it, and a small amount of stress, we all know we need it to get through challenging times and busy days, but it's when that builds up and it becomes chronic and it's there all the time that it becomes like a really big problem. It's a debilitating stress. Like you say, we all have, when I talk about anxiety as well, like there's a certain element that is normal. You worry about things, it's normal. A little bit of stress, normal. It's the way that, can you deal with that? And then it goes, and then that's it. You carry on with your life. That's when it's okay, because it's life. But when it is taking over and your life is becoming the stress. How old did you say your son was? So was this all happening when?
So this was before. So I was signed off from that job once, stupidly. and I'm sharing this because I know that people do this, because my friend's doing a similar thing at the moment. I went back after 6 weeks because I thought, well, it's the job, and if I don't go and face it, it's never going to change. So I went back after 6 weeks, and all I'm saying is I wasn't there for many more weeks before I was signed off really long term. And I was off for a really long time, and I went through the whole process of, all the different therapies and counselling and CBT and all that stuff that they send you for, but nothing really worked. And then one day something just clicked, and I thought, there's only me that can make this better. And when that clicked, I still had absolutely no clue how to do that, by the way. I was absolutely clueless, but there was something inside was telling me, because what I used to say to people, I just wish somebody would flick a magic switch and make it all go away. So you're clinging on to all these different therapies and counselling, thinking something amazing's going to happen. And I'm not knocking those procedures, but something amazing doesn't necessarily happen, and it can take more than that. And I know now that a big part of that is inside, knowing that you have to be willing to do more, and it's down to you. So I took a bit of a plunge at that point, and I thought, right, career change, I need to get out of what I'm doing. So I enrolled on a personal training diploma. And I know that sounds really random, going from a corporate office job to that, but I would just like to say that when I was in the height of building up to that stress, I did go to this exercise class religiously twice a week, and I swear that kept me going more, because I used to come out feeling really relieved and good and relaxed. And because of my irritable bowel, I developed an interest in nutrition. So I had this interest in exercise and how it helped me with my symptoms, and I had an interest in nutrition. So personal training diploma it was. And then I had a complete career change. I went to work in a health and rehabilitation gym with people with lots of chronic illnesses like heart disease, lung disease, cancer, strokes. And it was an amazing job. And I'm sharing this because it was a really not a stressful job at all. But all I would say is that, and I'm doing the hindsight thing again now, I hadn't dealt with the stress. Yes, I'd been signed off. Yes, I retrained. Yes, I got a new job. But I didn't deal with the stress. And I just feel like it followed me around for a really, really long time. So although I didn't have a stressful job, I describe it as being at the surface, just at the top. And the very slightest thing would just tip me again, and I'd be emotional, I'd be a bit of a wreck. And I kind of went on like that for years because I didn't know any different. And nobody said, hey, Jen, that's not normal. Or maybe me being me, I put a front on and didn't let everybody know. And don't get me wrong, they weren't really awful years of my life. I still had good times. It wasn't like that whole decade time was dreadful. It really wasn't. I had a really good job I enjoyed. We bought our house, we were renovating. But I'm just sharing it because I never dealt with it. It was always there. But then as life goes on, you have more challenges thrown at you, don't you? And then because you haven't dealt with that challenge then is a bigger problem, and you don't deal with that well, and then it builds up and builds up. Yeah. And that leads to when my son was sort of in the picture, when my second burnout came. Because I hadn't really learned from the first one.
Yeah, I like to use the analogy. I'm just looking at my plant actually in the kitchen, because that's the plant that I always picture. But with anything like this, I think what we do, and like what you said, is we so taking time off work and, doing all the things that they sent you to do, the CBT, they are amazing. But I see that as kind of if you've got a plant and it's dying, that's spraying the leaves. But what we want to do is we want to treat the root. That's where, the main part of the plant is. And we look after plants, when I see, I'll spray it and I'll water it. I'm looking after the roots and we're looking after the leaves. But with ourselves, we tend to just look after the leaves. So, what can people see on the outside? What can I do that's, being passed to me, instead of getting to that root cause?
Yeah, I love that analogy. It's perfect way of describing it.
And it just, and we are nature, and we have to look after ourselves the same way. And that's what I always remind people, and I'll ask them, what do you do if your plants die? And then, piece it together. And I feel exactly what you've just explained. You spent a good time and a good effort treating your leaves until you know, got to the root when you went through your second burnout. And with your son, so your son was young on your second burnout?
It was. So the kind of excuse me, sorry, the lead up to the second burnout, it's funny when you look back, isn't it, at the things you've done, you think, what why was I doing all that? Like, is it any wonder? So we obviously I was in that job and it was really good, and then we started trying for a family. We had to go through IVF. We were renovating a house. We spent a bit of time living with our in-laws whilst going through that, because our house was uninhabitable. And then we had our baby. It was a really stressful pregnancy, a stressful birth. So there's all this other stuff. Can you see how this is starting to pile on to what I hadn't already done?
Yeah.
And then Owen came along, and my maternity leave was amazing. I loved it. You're just in this bubble, you switch off. There's nothing else that matters. And it was truly amazing. Then you've got to go back to work, haven't you? So the stresses of life kind of like creep back in. But I didn't just go back to work. I decided I'd start a business, because, you know, that's a really good idea when you've got like a small baby, isn't it? Start a business. I started a business, and that came about because I was having dogs. You've got to be out, whatever the weather, however tired you are. When you've been up with your baby all night, you've still got to take your dogs for a walk. And I just benefited so much. And I thought, where's all these other mums and babies that could be out feeling amazing by being in the fresh air? So that was my drive to start my my fitness business, with predominantly doing outdoor exercise classes with mums and babies. And it kind of grew from there. I was running my business. And then the more I worked with these mums, the more I realised they needed more specialist help with the pelvic health and things. So I did even more training. I started writing new programmes. Can you see where this is going? We were renovating a house. I had a small baby. Yeah, so we kind of got to the November before COVID, and I just thought, if I was working for somebody else, I'd be going to the doctors now to be asked to be signed off with stress, because it wasn't as bad, but because I'd been through it once, I recognised the symptoms, so I knew what was coming. But being self-employed, it's not really that straightforward. So I thought, I'd be all right, Jen, just you crack on, you know, you'll be fine. And it got to the March, April when the lockdown happened, and I had to stop because I couldn't run my classes. And I just looked at my husband and I just said, thank goodness somebody has given me permission to stop. And just with that permission to stop, because I had no choice, that was when it hit again. And I just describe it as like, I just hit the wall, really. Because I've been trying to mask it, and then you admit it. It's like when you ask for help, isn't it? The tears come as soon as you ask someone help. I was like, oh. So I'd admitted I needed to stop. I just hit the wall. And I think it took me till about September, from April to September, to come to. And what I mean is I wasn't not present with my son. We loved lockdown, and I'm really sorry for people that had a really challenging time, but we were just in this bubble. But it gave me that time that I needed. So when I kind of came to in September, and what I mean by coming to is that ability to see slightly clearer and think a bit straight, I just said to myself, what am I doing? Like, what it was literally, what am I doing? Like, I've got a 4-year-old son, and I started to sort of think back how irritable I'd get with him, how distracted I was. You know, when you start admitting to yourself, because you bury it, don't you?
Yeah.
And I just thought, what am I doing? Like, I didn't go through all that to bring him into this world to be stressed and distracted and irritable and like not present, like, and not enjoy him. So that was my real turning point. I just thought, this has got to change. So I started making changes from that point onward, and that was sort of 2020.
Wow. So what were the first... So someone's listening to this now and they're like, oh my God, that is me. And they're sort of they're listening, and it might be the first time that they're admitting to themselves that they're stressed, they need to make changes. What would you say? I'm guessing that would be step one, just admitting it. What would step two be? Where would you get, what would you advise them to do next?
Yeah, so step one definitely is admitting it. Like, you know, stop burying your head in the sand and thinking it's not happening and it's just the way life is, because it really isn't. Like, it's not supposed to be like that. We just get you can get so dragged into stuff, and you're in so deep before you know it, you can't see another way. The key thing I would say is like acknowledging, and you could say that's similar to admitting it, but like acknowledging is just like acknowledging that you're stressed and being aware of what's making you stressed. So, like whether you keep a notebook or a journal, or just through the day think, because you know how you feel through the day. You know when you react to things, don't you? When you flare up or you feel a certain way, whether you feel angry or irritable or just that stress feeling, or you're emotional or you're sad, whatever it is you're feeling, acknowledge it and maybe jot it down. And where were you? What were you doing? What had you just done? Who were you with? And do that over a period of time, and you will start to see a little bit of maybe not a pattern, but you'd be able to acknowledge what's causing your stress.
Yeah,
it could just be life is stressful, but we can often pinpoint
and there's certain things that we could maybe then have a look at taking out. And I know that a lot of people, when you do talk to them about stress, because I don't know if you find the same, they get kind of a block as well, and it's, they know all of these things need to change, but because it's sort of their day-to-day, it's like, I can't, I can't ask for help. If you make suggestions like, oh, why don't you try this? Like, no, I can't, I don't have time. And, would you say that's another part of sort of not acknowledging what is going on? Because it's, or what, do you face that where people are just, no, I can't.
I think I can take myself back to when I was advised to do all these things to help my stress. When you're so stressed and you're in that constant state of fight or flight, it's not a case of like, how do you explain it? So I went to a yoga class because I was advised, try yoga, help you relax. And I was talking to somebody this the week, and she made me think of it a different way. She said, well, actually, when you're saying that now, that was the perfect alarm bell ringing of how stressed you were and how much you actually really needed to do that class. Because I was there and I was just like, how long have we got? I was just clock watching, because you're so like fight off, like I call it wired. You're so wired, you can't relax, you can't think straight, you can't concentrate. And people are telling you to do these things, but
it's another stress.
It is. It's really hard to put into words how it makes you feel. But
I think yoga probably, when you're in that mindset, that yoga is what, an hour, 2 hours, you've got to get there, you might have had to sit in traffic, you've got to do the yoga, you can't do it, it's hard, like you then putting on the yoga clothes. And I can see where if you are stressed, all of that is just extra stress, when all you want to be is at home being stressed in the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, in the privacy, so you don't have to explain yourself to anybody. But I fought against a lot of things for a lot of years, things I was advised to do that I just didn't. And then when I knew I had to make a change, I started trying all these things. And this is like another piece of advice I'd like to offer people is, it's about taking really small steps. So we think we've got to do this really grand thing to make this like really big difference. And it really isn't like that. Like the women I work with, and it still blows my mind, I see the most amazing transformations by people taking the smallest steps. And you try something, and it's not just about taking steps, it's about being open and the trial and error, because what suits one person, I would never sit here and say, well, you must do this and you must do that, because what suits one person doesn't suit another. And it's very much a personal thing. Yeah. So I say be open to trying things. You've got to give it a little bit of time. Don't just do it once and think, well, that didn't work, that was a waste of time. Nothing's going to work once, but introduce something, try it for a few weeks. Is it having any impact? If it's really not working, right? Well, don't just think, well, there's no point. Just let it go. Try something else, and just be open to that process of trying different things, and knowing that just if that doesn't work doesn't mean there's no hope for you. It just means that you've got to try the next thing. And if you take a really small step, so if I give you an example, and this is only what I do, I'm not saying people have to do this, but I started, my non-negotiables in the morning, one's journaling, and you just choose a time and you just sit and do a little bit, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. And now it's habit for me. I don't even think about it. It's habit. And I actually miss it now and I don't do it. So you keep doing that small thing till it becomes habit and you don't notice you're doing it. And then you think, oh, right, well, I could add something else now.
Yeah.
And then you add something else, rather than doing these 10 things at once that is not going to happen, because it's not going to happen, is it, when you're already stressed?
No, I love that. And I can't remember, I spoke about it in another podcast. I can't remember what I read, or it was another podcast I'd listened to, or it was a study. Anyway, that was it. There was a lady who was told that it was slightly different, but it's just a one step at a time. She was told she had MS and wasn't ever given any options of how to help, live with MS. So she took it upon herself, and she was like, just one day at a time. And she started with something as simple as one glass of water in the morning as soon as she woke up, before she did anything else. Anyway, fast forward the story. She, lives with MS. She's happy. She's not as debilitated as what they predicted. And then as you were talking then, that I was just, thinking of that story. And, one step could be that, you start with a glass of water in the morning. You take 5 minutes before you talk to anybody else. That could be one step, before doing anything else, that little bit of headspace. And I'm sure that's something, just little that, and that you could do that for a month, and then you might be ready to go to yoga or, do whatever. But it's all, like you said, personal. But you need to make it easy for yourself, don't you, as well? Because, in your case, you had 10 years of those anxious, stressed feelings to unravel. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. It's 10, on how long you've had these feelings, it's not going to happen very quickly, because you've got all of that to unpack and all of that to get through.
I think that's a really key message as well, that it doesn't just happen. It definitely doesn't. If you hit burnout, it can take up to 12 months, if not longer, to fully recover and get back. And I think women need to know that, because you would give up too soon otherwise and think there was no way out. But you can't expect to have been, and how many women out there, it's not just me, I know mine's really long, but there's women for years. You can't be in that state for years and then expect to be fixed in like 6 weeks or something. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't happen. And I'm just being realistic and open about that, because I would never mislead anybody. But what I would say is that, and I'm speaking from experience, like, it's worth the effort. If I compare how I feel now to how I felt, there's no questioning that it wasn't worth doing what I've done. And I don't deny it's been challenging. I don't deny I've sat with some uncomfortable things. I don't deny that it's been hard work, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth it.
And you're on the other side. And I always try to, when I talk to people as well, just visualize yourself being on the other side, and how does it feel? Because you will get there. So allowing yourself to sort of imagine your future self, 12 months time, where do you want to be? You want to be on a podcast sharing your story with other women to help them out. Amazing. It's having that, and it's listening to people like you as well, seeing that there is an end to that chapter of your life. Because you do get stuck in it. And I know people will be women will be listening to this, and they might be the same as you, 10 years. And I always think of friends, and I think, gosh, they, you have your certain friends that are the stress friends, but now we've been friends for like 10 years, 12 years, and they're still the stressed friend, So if you're listening to this and it's not you, reach out to your friend who is your stressed friend. Because if they've been your friend for a long time and they've been your stressed friend for a long time, then they've probably, they probably need your help, or they probably want some support, or even just ask them like, are you okay? But really sincerely, because we all have those people, and the longer we see it, it comes natural to us as well. Do you know what I mean?
And I think also as women that, that reaching out and asking, we're really good at putting on a front. So when I got signed off from work long term, everybody at work was like, what?
Yeah.
What's wrong with Jen? Because I just had this amazing ability to just, everything's fine. Inside, I was absolutely broken.
Yeah.
And we can do that with, your family generally pick up, don't they? They know, but like you can still do that to an element with friends. You can still pretend everything's hunky-dory and nothing's wrong. And we're really good at that. And I know women don't like to ask for help because we feel like we should be coping and we should be able to get on, and it's that feeling of failure. But it's not. Nobody prepares you for life, do they? And it's, if you've never really been taught, I come back to that understanding what stress is, and it's coping mechanisms, isn't it? And because life is always going to be stressful, it's never not going to be stressful, but it's how you react to it. And if you're already stressed, you react to it bad, and then that adds another layer of stress, and it just gets worse. Whereas, and me now, so a client said to me the week, do you still do all these things then? And I'm like, yeah, I have daily kind of, I don't want to call them rituals. That sounds a bit heavy, but you know what I mean? I have daily things I
call
do.
them rituals. It's fine. I call them rituals.
Yeah, okay, that's okay. But I have daily things that I do because I have to, and I know when I've not done them. I still get inside my own head, and I can go never back where I was, but by doing those things daily and taking better care of myself, it means that when that next stressful thing does come, it's not going to be stressful, because that's impossible, but it's not going to tip me over the edge, like it has done in the past.
I always say that I have my toolbox now, but even last week, it was last Monday, I just felt off. But me 4 years ago would have embraced that off. I would have probably cried, sat on the sofa, cried, and just wallowed in the feeling of, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm anxious. I just feel, I just had that feeling of like impending doom. Now I know what I need to do. I have this toolbox. So my toolbox was sit in the garden. I worked in the garden. I sat on the grass. I lay on the grass for a little bit, had a cuddle with the dogs. I put some meditation music on, and I did a little gratitude practice in the garden. 5 things I'm grateful for right now: the plants, the trees, the birds, the sunshine. I know not everyone has that right now, but that, I didn't used to have those tools, and it sounds so simple, go and sit outside and look at what you're grateful for, but it worked. And the feeling shifted, and I wasn't anxious anymore. So for me, it was more anxiety than stress, but obviously stress can bring on, but I had no reason. But it was just that toolbox of like, right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my essential oils, take them outside, sit on the grass, do these things, because I know it makes me feel good. And the same as you, I journal every morning. I sit quietly for about 10 minutes before I journal. So I either meditate or I'll just lie on the bed with my eyes closed. Just for that time to have for myself in the morning before I start the day. And then I'll, do a bit of journaling. And it's having these tools that, other people might hate that. I know people that I meditate, but I know some people are absolutely not. Makes me feel worse. I just get into my head. I will try go for a walk then. It's still getting into that space in your mind. And it's finding, some people prefer to go and work out and go to the gym and lift heavy weights or go for a run. We all have our own toolbox, and it's about building that toolbox up, isn't it?
That's what I was saying before. It's finding those things that work for you. And it can be frustrating because, again, you just want this magic thing to happen, but you've just got to be patient. The key thing is, if you do those small steps and they become part of your habit, they're not just a quick fix, they become ingrained into your day-to-day life. So then that means you're always doing them. It's not necessarily, and I still, like you, I have extra tools I might go and get if I'm feeling a particular way, but I do those day-to-day things that keep me on an even keel that I don't even think twice about now. So yeah, and I think like another important message for women is, don't be afraid to like ask for help and support. There's nothing wrong with reaching out. I had to, because I implemented all these different things, looking after myself better and lots of boundaries in place and saying no, and a better boundary with my business. But there was still something, I find it really hard to put into words. There was still something not right. And I was still very unsettled and unsure of what to do. I knew I still wasn't quite there.
That's the beauty of now what you do as a coach. And, you know, because some people might think, oh, I've got no one to talk to, or they don't want to ask for help in the immediate family for whatever reason, or, you know, friends, or they don't want to try therapy, all of those things. And that's the beauty of going to a coach. It's a neutral person that's not going to judge you. They're not going to compare, and they can help to guide you until you are ready to ask for help. Friends, family, friends, you probably go first. But there are people, you know, and I know people are scared of like therapy. So I think reaching out to a coach, and I know you had a coach, didn't you, before?
I did. I had a coach. So I did like just about 12 months of implementing those things for myself. And then I started working with a coach after that, because I just was really struggling still. And honestly, she absolutely transformed my life. And the interesting thing was, so when I did my, it comes after that actually, when I was working with her, a lot of it was mindset, which was an area I hadn't addressed because I didn't know a massive amount about it. It was more the self-care and boundaries and all that kind of stuff. And it was a lot of it was mindset with her, which was huge to me. And I'd only been working with her for a few weeks. And prior to seeing her, I literally couldn't think straight. My head, and I know so many women are like this, everything just went round and round on a loop. I just was crazy. That's the only way I could describe it. I just couldn't stop thinking. Everything was just going round my thoughts, and it's like all this negative self-talk and not knowing what to do, and you're just inside your head. And how many women are just inside the head? You know, how I failed at this, I haven't done this, what should I do with that? It's just horrible feeling. I could go for a walk with my dogs, but my mind was still constant. So to have that cleared, which she helped me do, was probably one of the most amazing feelings I've ever had, to be honest. Because when I started journaling with her, I could feel like reams of A4. It's like, turn another page. But then the more I did with her, I remember I went to journal one day and I just had nothing to say. I was like, oh my God, I've got nothing on my mind. This is amazing. And by doing that, it allowed me to think clearly. And I was just sat at home one night with my dog on the sofa, and it was literally like this light bulb went off. And I just went, I know what I could do. I could like maybe train to be a coach, and I could help other women. And that was where it all started for me. And I did. I went for it. I wrapped my fitness business up. I committed to training full time. And then I did like my wellness certification. And the interesting thing was that all the things I learned in that about well-being, I had somehow in my own way muddled through them as I was trying to find my ways to overcome and manage stress. So it kind of all, yes, I had all that awful stuff. But for me, it magically just came together at the end, that all that I'd been through and this certification came together to put me in this, what I class as a privileged position now, where I can help and support other women. Because not only do I have the certification behind me and the coaching skills, I get it, I've lived it, I've breathed it, I know how it feels, and I know what women are going through. So that can be one of the most important things, I think.
And I feel like some of these things, other people, so in your case, they have to live it to then share to others. And there's lots of examples, but in your case, you lived that to then step into your purpose of helping others. You know, that happens in lots of places. So it's unfortunate for the person who goes through it to begin with, but it's a positive, and obviously a mindset thing. Being able to find a positive from a negative as well is something that you can't do when you're stressed, and then, you know, leading yourself up to that. So if women wanted to work with you, are you open for one-to-ones right now, or group program?
Yeah, I haven't got a group program at the moment. It's something I'm working on. So one-to-ones I'm open for. You know, I can offer a chat with people as well if they want to have a chat with me first to see if, you know, you've got to make sure you're the right fit and I'm the right person for them. I want people to be with me. It's going to work for them. But yeah.
Amazing. And I will put all of Jen's detail. I'll put Jen's Instagram and any other links that she's got in the show notes if you want to go check her out. And, you know, if you're in the UK and you want to drop her anywhere in the world really, but you can, drop her a message. One last thing that so my new 2024, I'm going to ask all my guests. So what is your vision for the women listening to the podcast? So after they've listened to this podcast today, what is your vision? What would be the last thing you'd like to share with them?
So my vision for what I'd like them to be doing, or
for the women listening. So what's your hope, your dream, your vision for the women listening?
So my hope is that by listening to my story that I've shared today, that resonates with people, that helps women think, oh, hang on, I shouldn't be feeling like this. This isn't normal. And there is something that I can do. There is hope, because if Jen's done it, I can. And it's true, because if I look back now, I just think, wow, what a transformation. And I'm not saying that to, think, oh, look at me. I can say, look at me, because I've been there, So I would just love this to resonate with somebody else, even if it's just one person that says, do you know what? I've had enough of feeling like this, and I want to do something about it so that I can just be present, live my life, enjoy it, have fun again. Because you lose all those things when you're wrapped up in stress. Then that would just be amazing.
Oh, thank you. That was a beautiful vision. And thank you very much for coming on to the podcast. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And I'll be back next week. Thank you.
And that's it today, everybody. I hope you have a lovely week, and I'll see you again next week. Don't forget, 5 stars, download, tell your friends. You're amazing.